Sweet friends, how do you do today? And how do you woo today? And how do you woo you today? Welcome to How to Woo, a podcast on love and making love so we can make sure we're making lives we love. I am your host, Luna Robbie. I am a multi-artist and creative guide obsessed with learning about life, especially from other humans direct, because we all have our own unique perspective and wisdom. So here we are again for some deep listening and a little vicrophilia so we can stay excited about life and co-create a world where taking care of each other is the norm. Let's dive in. Our guest today is a 40-year-old hetero-flexible white dude who uses he/him pronouns, who is in a monogamous marriage. They were high school sweethearts, and their vanilla origin story has evolved into a rewarding and nurturing 24/7 DS, dominant-submissive power dynamic, as they also navigate family life that includes 3 kids. Into spanking, rope and bondage, come play, water sports, and his submissive. He works in education and is with us today from the U.S. East Coast. Welcome, Steve.
Hello, YO.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm awesome. We're doing my second favorite thing next to actual fucking, so thank you for joining me here for this conversation today. Before we dive into sexy naughty details, let's start by getting to know you just a little bit. So first, I would love to hear what in general brings you joy or excitement in this lifetime. What makes you go woo?
I love being outdoors. I love the people that I care about. And I love being a highly sexual person.
Have you always loved being a highly sexual person, or is that part of a journey we're going to hear about?
It's definitely part of a journey. I think ever since I kind of began to mature as a very young man, it has been a large part of my life. So I'd say yeah, but I was not highly sexualized when I was a young boy.
Yeah.
So that's something that developed for sure.
Okay. What sort of outdoor activities do you enjoy?
I'm big into mountain biking. I'm big into kind of just getting out into the woods. I live in a highly wooded area, so it's certainly a lot to explore. And I just like being independent. I like to be able to go out and feel like I'm in charge of myself.
I totally feel that. I feel like also being in nature is such a healthy, helpful reset for me, especially in the time of screens, like just feeling sunlight on my skin, breathing air that's near a tree. Like, I love that. I would love to hear next. How do you woo you? Tell us a little bit about your self-love.
I am the type of person who enjoys physical activity. I think in order to feel like I'm being a healthy person, I like to be able to use my body. I think my physicality and my physical being is a big part of what I feel important to me. It's just a big part of my life. So I think caring for my body, moving my body, feeling like I'm strong is something that's always been important for me. Not in like kind of like a jock meathead kind of way, but I just enjoy being a person who can do things.
That's awesome. I did not learn to love moving my body until just a few years ago. Do you feel like that was always a part of you, or is it something you've cultivated, or perhaps a mixture?
It's funny because when I was a younger kid, I've always been a larger person. So I think people have always looked at me as a physical person, someone who can lift heavy things and be strong and do strong things. But I was kind of a clumsy child when it came to sports and things like that. And I think just recently, as a older person, I've kind of just learned to let go of worrying whether I'm clumsy or not, and I've turned into even a better athlete. But I've always been really interested in doing things with my body in terms of like building. I build things. I can work with wood. I can kind of figure things out. I'm handy. So yeah, I mean, I think I've always been a physical person, but it's not until recently where I felt like I can just kind of not worry about whether I'm doing it right or not
Mm,
and just become kind of more of a comfortable with my body.
fuck yeah, that's great. It sounds like a lot of your self-love is very active. Do you have any more like relaxy things? I'm totally biased because I'm like a bathtubs person. Like, do you have any lazier self-love?
It's the bathtub. I am a bathtub person. I have always been a bathtub person. It's funny
Yes.
that you said that because as soon as you said it before you mentioned bathtubs, that's my spot. I've grew up in a house that had a really large bathtub that had like the whirlpool jets, which I actually don't
Mhm.
like. I don't
Yeah.
I
I
don't
want
like
it to
those.
be
I,
calm.
yes, I like super hot, almost so hot I can barely get in, which I don't know if that's healthy or not, but I don't care. And I will force myself to get into the scalding water, and then I can sit in there forever. I could probably stay in for like an hour to an hour and a half until I'm shriveled and dehydrated, and then I have to get out and try not to pass out and drink water. So
Totally, totally. Well, you don't look like you've boiled yourself, and if your body can handle it, you're probably okay. And there are all sorts of researches that say that, if we raise our body temperature before bedtime, I'm a nighttime bather, then it's easier
I'm
to fall
sure.
asleep because then our internal temperature drops after we're very hot. And I too will get into a hot bath because I like to turn red and pink. Like I like to see my skin get red and pink, spankings aren't the only way. And then I like to stay in until it's like cold. I'll read a book. I do try to bring hydration, but yeah, I'm right there with you with the pruniness.
I've gotten into a bad habit where I've been bringing my phone into the tub with me, which is
Mm,
really, I need to get away. I used to bring books, but I was ruining all my books, even though I had like a special rack to put them on.
yeah.
Inevitably, you ruin your book. Either you dump the whole thing in or it just slowly gets steamed over time.
I have not yet dumped a book, but I have totally steamed them.
Yeah, yeah. So I need to get back to that. But yes, bathtubs is for sure, pretty much anybody who knows me knows that. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, so now tell us, how do you like to receive love from others or attention or affection, anything that makes you melt, receiving from another human being? How do you like to be wooed?
The first thing that comes to mind is love languages and how I identify with my love languages. And I think for me, I'm very big into physical touch and I'm very big into acts of service. I do enjoy conversation, but it's for me, it's showing me how much you love me through touching me and pleasing me and doing acts, specifically sexual acts of service for me is my love language.
Mm,
That's what makes me feel appreciated the most.
yeah, totally hear that. Now, you are in a long term connection with a beloved partner. I would love to hear if you can articulate what makes you or helps you or supports you in feeling connected to another person. And it can be the romantic partner or kind of in any context. Like, what is it that helps you feel connected to another human being?
I enjoy reading. I feel that I'm an empathetic person, and I know everybody says they're an empathetic person, but
Not
I
everybody does.
feel I know, but I've met a lot of people who say they're empathetic, and you pay attention to them, and they don't. I don't know if they know what the word means.
It can be confused with projection quite a lot, I think. And that's also how we experience the world.
Maybe I do as well. I'm not sure, but I enjoy trying to connect with people on an emotional level where I feel like I am trying to identify with the way they're feeling, and then I can kind of match that energy with them. You did mention my partner, who's a huge part of my life and has been for a very long time. And I feel that I connect with her in a unusual and unique way that I haven't really connected with anybody else. So I think when you ask the question, that's who I think about. Is I think about how do I connect with her, and how is that important for me? I'm not a religious person, but I am spiritual in a personal way, and I think the connection that I feel with her is a spiritual connection. What's fun and interesting and often problematic with that is that she has a different love language than I do. And we need to figure out how to meet each other's needs in a way that's beneficial for both of us and makes us feel as if we're both being even or fair or connecting to each other in a way that's meaningful. Because sometimes it gets uneven or sometimes it gets out of whack and we have to reconnect. we've done this through our entire relationship is we've had moments of being disconnected, sometimes very severely disconnected to the point where we're not together, but we always seem to magnetically attract back to each other.
I love that answer, and you've nearly preempted my next question, which is what quality or type or texture of connection do you need to feel with a partner before getting physically intimate? You know, and there's the like broad answer that you could look at of like winding back to the beginning, like why did you escalate to connection? But I think because we have the benefit of talking to someone who's been in a long-term connection, it could be really interesting to hear like on a day-to-day way, especially, you know, those moments where we fluctuate with closeness and distance with a partner, like what quality of connection do you need to feel between the two of you for physical intimacy to feel the juiciest?
I think herein lies the problem that I just mentioned before is I need the touch. Like
Yeah.
for me, I can jump right in, and for me, that's what's going to make me feel connected. So it's the act, it's doing whatever sexy, fun thing, or even if it's just something small like hugging or being close. For me, it's that like it makes me think. What's the song? It's "Enjoy the Silence." You know, it's the '80s song. But for me, yeah, like I don't need to have the long conversation. I don't need to check in about how the day was. For me, it's that almost magnetic connection where we see each other and boom, like our bodies just kind of come together and connect. And it's been like that. And I said I've been in a long term relationship. We have taken breaks, and both of us have been with other people and have had other experiences. And for me, it's just that's universal for me is it's I can go right to the physical like and it's not that's how I feel connected,
Mm.
whereas my partner is very much needs to have kind of the social conversation beforehand and make sure that that connection is made before they're in a space where they feel like they can have the physical connection. And this has led to problems in the past. And I think us transitioning into our dynamic has actually really helped with this. It's helped with communication between us, and it's helped us verbalize what we're able to, what we need from each other in a calm way, which has avoided a lot of arguments. So yeah, for me, it's like I could just go right to it, right to the physical, and that's what I want.
So, at the risk of jumping ahead a little bit, I would love to hear what has been helpful in the communication that it sounds like accompanies the dynamic between you and your partner. Like, what have you discovered in that respect?
So we began our quest. And I want to say that I'm the one who's kind of been directing this whole adventure. And sometimes that has also led to problems where I'm kind of pushing my agenda and my partner, my submissive, is pulling me back a little bit because of her own comfort level. And that's something that I've had to come to grips with. But we began the adventure in a 24/7 dominant submissive dynamic in what I would say was like a very traditional way. I kind of read all the blogs, I read some books, I listened to some podcasts, and I created this monstrosity of a contract that we were going to follow that had all these rules that we agreed upon. And what was interesting is when I made that contract, and I did make it with her, we agreed that we would have monthly meetings to discuss how the contract was going. And we did that. You know, we weren't perfect with it, but we had these sit down meetings and tried to do it in space where we were both very neutral and calm and able to kind of discuss the contract from as much of an outside perspective or neutral perspective as possible and figure out what was working and what was not. And this led to just really constructive conversation as to how we were feeling and how we were experiencing the dynamic and how our relationship was just doing in general. So I think just allowing it was almost like a therapy session. And we've been to couples therapy before. So we knew what that was like, but being able to kind of just do it on our own and do it with this kind of fun thing that we'd created, or that I started and then she had her hand in as well, really led to some solid communication between us that
Mm,
we hadn't had before that.
yeah. So I'm hearing regularly structured check-ins that create space for that communication, that co-create a sense of connection that is, even if you don't need that type of a connection to feel sexually aroused or wanting to physically connect, it sounds like it is supporting that connection for both of you.
Yeah, and I think especially those meetings were not, there was no, for at least for me, that was not a, it wasn't supposed to be like a sexual thing. Like it was just a way for us to really check in with each other,
Yeah.
where we would feel comfortable doing that without any kind of sexual pressure, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Am I understanding correctly that the focus is about your sex lives? Like it's about your dynamic or your connection, your sexual connection? Or is it a general life check in? Well, like what's the structure of it? I love details.
It's very well, it's very much about it, it started very much about the contract. And I think
Okay.
what we realized is that we are different in our sexual drives. I am very highly sexual. I'm constantly thinking about it. That's my interest. I am very fascinated with her, and she is very much kind of my muse and object of desire. And it's different for her. I think the drive is not the same. And we've ran into some problems even when we were dating in high school, when we first kind of met each other, all the way through our marriage, where I have a drive and I'm pushing and I'm always kind of asking for things, wanting things, expecting things, which led to resentment when I wasn't receiving them. And it just turned into something that was turning into this kind of beast. And I think by switching into the dynamic, one, it allows me to communicate my needs and what I'm wanting more clearly and more reasonably. But two, it also is allowing her to do the same thing, to say, these are what I need or not need all the time. And it's just allowed us to connect with each other in a way that I think was clouded with a lot of resentment that I notice in a lot of relationships,
Yes.
especially kind of monogamous marriages. That it's always been something that I didn't want to become, and I feel like we were becoming that in our marriage. So we're just really enjoying this,
I love
our
that.
new dynamic, and what it looks like now, which is different than that giant contract I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, yeah. I love explicitly creating space for both parties to check in about needs because what I've noticed from talking to people is not only do many long-term partnerships who fall into a rhythm, and people love each other, not only do they forget to check in or share their needs with each other, oftentimes it comes from a place of not even having conscious awareness around what they actually need. Because, life is a lot. Like there's a lot to keep up with. And if it's not explicitly prioritized, it's easy to just let something go. I know that even as a single person in my own life, as I navigate loverships, I'm just like, I gotta express my needs, with each lover as it evolves. And in relationships where I don't set up a pattern of that, I have a much more difficult time personally bringing something up because then I feel like I'm creating a problem or I'm like, whatever, being the buzzkill or something. So I love
Right.
that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's funny because like we have tried to, I have a family and we have limited kind of alone time, at least, for dates and things like that,
Yeah.
and playtime, just the time to really take that time to connect with each other. I think there are times where we've tried to squeeze our meetings into a date,
Mm.
where we've got all dressed up, we've gone out, we're sitting at a restaurant, and we try to kind of hold a makeshift meeting, and it's not neutral. It's not the time to do it, and it's ruined date nights for whatever
Damn.
one reason or another. But it's just not relaxed enough. It's not sitting on the couch and just looking at the contract or just having that kind of neutral discussion with each other. So we have done that a few times where we've forgotten what space we're supposed to be in, and it doesn't turn out very well.
Yeah.
It turns into an argument.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, experiments are worthy, and sometimes the results are conclusive and not necessarily what we hoped to discover in that experiment, right? And, I think sometimes there's only one way to discover that, and I could understand making that choice, and it sounds like you have learned from it in an apt way. I would love to hear what health and safety considerations or practices you do. Like, obviously you're in a long-term connection, so it's maybe not the same as like going out and fucking lots of people, but it sounds like you have had experiences with other lovers in the past. So maybe whatever feels relevant to you, what are some of your health and safety practices?
Yeah, I do. I was thinking about this question because it's not quite the same for us.
Yeah.
We have talked about bringing in other people in the future, but I think that's always kind of remained the distant future. So we're not actively testing or things like that, or having to have those conversations with each other. We are fluid bonded. We are comfortable enough with each other that we know we can trust each other. But I think what I had thought about when I looked at this question was our kind of mental safety with each other, and
Yes.
are we treating each other in a way that's being considerate of the other person's mental well-being, and making sure that this kind of experiment that you mentioned, because it is, even though we've been doing it for going on 3 years now, is really what's best for us. And is it really bringing all the benefits that we want it to bring? So yeah, for us, or at least for me being the dominant, is I'm constantly trying to make sure that even though I am expressing all these needs and kind of like directing my sexual energy in the way that I want to, is that healthy for my submissive? And am I doing the things that she needs to feel like she's also benefiting and feeling like it's a great thing that we have between each other? I had mentioned that we have had arguments, as I think everybody does. And if we are engaged in something like that, it leads to a drop out of the dynamic, the sub
Yeah.
drop or dom drop, whatever happens, we kind of get off of our rhythm, and the conversation can come up when we're feeling insecure or I'm feeling insecure, is are we doing the right thing, and can we go back? Can we go back? Like, if we were to just say we're done with our dynamic, can we just go back to having a normal relationship?
Mm.
I say normal, but a monogamous marriage that is looked at by the outside world as being totally normal. It's a difficult question to ask. I am personally not too concerned about it. I said that we have always had this magnetic attraction that no matter what happens, no matter if we have a fight or if we break up or if we start dating other people and then we realize that we need to see each other again, whenever we do see each other again, we're back to where we were. So I think making sure the dynamic that I've created and that she's joined in with me in doing is it in our best interest? That's the safety concern that I have from my perspective.
Yeah, I totally hear that. And I love that thoughtfulness. And also, what I've noticed from talking to people who are in air quotes, normative vanilla relationships is that there usually is some sort of unspoken dynamic with unspoken agreements, even if it's just like history of how the pattern has been. And they're often, every relationship is some kind of power exchange off and on. In a conversation, we are switching back and forth. We're listening. We're hopefully actively co-creating an experience together. And so it sounds like you two, regardless of where things go, are just developing open communication skills that I imagine benefit your connection, even if it's not always easy, right? What long-term relationship is? I haven't talked to anyone that was like, piece of cake every day.
I agree with that. I think that I don't know.
Well, I would also love to hear maybe specifically because before we started recording, you revealed to me that in terms of like skill building for specific things like rope, right? Which we have to be very careful of nerves and circulation and the comfort of the submissive. It sounded like you are also like learning how to safely play with the things that you're bringing into your dynamic from workshops. You mentioned doing research before diving into contracts. So I see that as part of like health and safety as well. And I'm also wondering now about cum play. Like, are you in a position where there's some sort of like birth control or like a comfort with the cum, or do you put it in certain places? Like, what do you consider when it comes to that sort of stuff?
I got myself a vasectomy after our third child.
Yes, hot, amazing. Oh, congratulations. That's so fun.
Yeah, and I love it. I That's exactly what I wanted. It was a funny story, but I don't know if it's a sex story, but just getting the procedure done was kind of funny that you couldn't get it done at a Christian facility is what I was told by the doctor. So I had to do it off site, but then you could have it reversed at a Christian facility because that's
Whoa.
bringing, you're getting brought back into the fold by reversing it. But no, I am very for male contraception. Like
Yeah.
getting it done, what for me is a freeing and liberating thing. I don't want to have any more children.
Yeah.
And it does just open up the whole world because yes, I love to put it everywhere. I love to put my cum everywhere on my submissive. I want it everywhere. Even like, and I think that's led to some issues because she doesn't always want it everywhere. She knows that like the worship, that's what's going to make me feel like I am appreciated and worshiped. So she knows how to do it, but she's a person and she doesn't need to say yes to having it everywhere all the time. But she also loves it as well. She at certain places more than others. But for me, it's just like that's my thing. I think I'm in some ways claiming her. In some ways, I just love to see it all over her. Like it is just a hot thing for me that I really enjoy.
That is amazing and makes me so happy to hear. Okay, so getting more explicitly sexy. If you had to rate yourself on a sexual shameometer, with 10 being the most full of shame and 0 being like, I do not have any, where do you fall today, and when, if ever, has your shame coaster squiggled up and down?
I'm very low on the shameometer. I think due to the person who am right now, that I would be around a 1.
Okay.
And I think the only reason there's any little bit of shame there is simply from social pressure from other people and just knowing that not everybody out there is wanting to shout from the rooftops what their sexuality is and what they're into, and that there's so much judgment out there. It hurts me to like think about it because that's all I want to talk about. And I want to talk about it with everybody. I want to talk about it with friends. I want to talk about it with like my parents, like not in I don't want to like go deep diving with my parents because I know they would have a crazy reaction, but like I just want to be open with everybody, coworkers, and I know that leads to a whole can of worms. So just like I want to just let it out and just talk about it constantly, and I can't. And I think maybe there's a little shame in that I just know I can't quite fully express whenever I want to. And I think I've always had a special place for religion in my life. I come from an interesting background where my mother is a Protestant and my grandparents were Catholic, and I have Jewish family, and I've always been involved in holidays from all of those different families. I've been to church for all of the, or whatever, synagogue. I've been to religious services from so many different religions. I went to Catholic high school and took religion class there. So I've kind of always had different experiences with religion, but I've always been a non-believer. I've always been agnostic. I've always felt like an outsider looking in and observing other people experience their religion. So I've kind of seen the Catholic shame, and I've looked at kind of the rigidity of being a Protestant, and I've looked at, I don't know how much Judaism has influenced me. In fact, I think that part of my family, they were probably the most open bunch out of all of them.
Yeah.
But just like looking at all these different people get really affected by religion, to me was always disheartening for me. Seeing that they're feeling some sort of shame from whatever external influence they want to say they're feeling it from or experiencing it from. Not that it's their fault or anything, but just being able to avoid that and look at things as an outsider for me has always been a big part of my life. Like I enjoy being kind of, I always want to say I feel like I'm above it. I'm not above it. I just have never been a part of it. It's never been a part of my personality.
Yes, well, it is so interesting to me to hear that even though you, in your upbringing, had these strong religious influences, unlike some other people I've spoken with, it just didn't stick. And there are like swaths of humans who have that. And you said you remembered like just always feeling like an outside, like it was the feeling like that's not for me, or like, okay, that's a story, it doesn't really apply. Like, can you articulate how it didn't stick on you?
I never believed. I never
Mm,
believed in the higher power, or if it's there, that it's not really concerned with us. Pascal, the philosopher, would say that's a bad way to be. You should just force yourself to believe, just in case there's a heaven, so you could get it. But
that's LOL. Okay. Wow. Just in
but
case.
just in case, yeah. But I've always sat in the church, and I enjoy learning. I
Yeah.
enjoy learning religion. I enjoyed going to Catholic high school because it was fun to learn about religion. But I've always just sat in church and looked around at everybody and looked at all the statues, or in the Catholic Church, they had all the stained glass windows, and admired kind of the beauty of everything, and really enjoyed the ritual of everything. But for me, it was always something that just seemed like it didn't really influence me at all. It just never
Yeah.
sucked me in.
Wow. I think for me, it's just so hard to believe that a god, this god concept, who's supposedly the ultimate creator, the original creator, would have anything against our original creativity that is sex. Like, I'm like, all of creation is literally sex and procreation, you know? So I think that's where kind of the disconnect lies for me. I love hearing that you have that appreciation. So I would love to hear next, in the circumstances of your upbringing, what was your sex education like? Like, take us through your personal timeline, maybe starting with when you first remember hearing about it. Did you get a sex ed in a Catholic school? Like, what was all of that like? Did you get to talk at home? Tell us what you remember.
I definitely don't think we got anything at Catholic school. This was Catholic high school. I went to just regular colloquial or public school for my younger years, and we did receive kind of the basic. It wasn't the separation. We didn't separate girls from boys, but we did have kind of. It's funny because it was one of the students' moms come in to do the talk, and I forget if she was a nurse or whatever, but I just remember it was very basic. It wasn't a abstinence lesson. It had, kind of the scientific birds and the bees aspect to it. But the moment that sticks out in my head is the moment that the mother of the kid takes out the like English cucumber and the condom and demonstrated how to put a condom on. And I just remember that student dying because they were watching their mother apply the condom to the cucumber in front of all of their friends and classmates. And just that really stuck in my head. So we did have, but I think that was one class period out of the entire school career that
Wow.
was dedicated to that. And maybe I remember miscorrectly. or incorrectly, but that was the extent of it. And I mentioned that my mother is a cool lady who grew up in the 70s and likes to paint herself as being this kind of hippie college kid. But I think her influence, like I said, she's Protestant. She came from kind of a very proper family that has very strict morals and manners, and everything was taught to be kind of proper. She had a certain aversion to talking about health with me, I think.
Okay.
And her version of having the talk with me was leaving her, what's the book that everybody had from that era, the Our Bodies Ourselves. So she had a copy of Our Bodies Ourselves, and I think she left it in a place where she knew that I would see it. So
Okay.
I got to discover like the literally the 70s version of that book and rifle through it
I love
as a
that.
young man, probably like 10 years old. I discovered it for the first time, and I would revisit it. Wasn't necessarily reading it, it was more just like getting the like little pencil drawings and kind of learning anatomy by looking at the detailed drawings that were in there. But it was also exciting for me. And then at some point, I grew up being her only son, although she remarried, and I gained a stepbrother out of that. So
Mm.
she remarried, very nice guy, and I all of a sudden gained this brother when I was 3 years old. And and he's my brother now, he's not my stepbrother. But when we were of age, probably like 13, 12, 13, they showed us the video. I don't know what video it is. I don't have the title, but it was a very graphic video, actually. When I go back and think about it, I think it had like an internal video of penetration, like
Okay.
the penis in the vagina and shooting semen in the vagina. Like I may have made the semen part up because maybe that's what I'm into, but like it was like an internal view of what was going on. And I just remember being in the living room watching this video that my parents said I had to watch with my brother, and I feel like my parents were sitting there too. And there was
Wow.
no conversation. We were just sitting watching like a documentary. It was very educational, but I just remember like there was kind of a hold up having that conversation with the parents. It didn't happen.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, it's so interesting. Those are the moments where I'm like, what is the emotional context here? Like, for me,
Yeah,
sometimes being observed when I am encountering a new situation and I'm finding myself in freeze mode because I'm like, what are human protocols? What will elicit good or bad reaction from people? It's like, and I don't know what to do. And so then instead of, having a jumping off point of connection or dialogue, I find myself in total freeze mode and then I don't know what to make of it. So,
I mean, I think I was in freeze mode there because I had an erection and I was
yeah,
sitting on the couch.
yes,
Families around. I'm like, this is strangely arousing, and I don't
totally.
really know why. And maybe I had discovered masturbation at that point. We'll go through
That's my next
my
question.
yeah.
like like masturbation, talking with friends, like did you talk with your brother about things like what sort of peer discussions or learnings or self-learnings did you uncover next?
Definitely no conversation with my brother. He was kind of a different kid than me. He was a athlete, and I was kind of his like athletic punching bag. So like we were like in a different social category, different. We related with like over Legos, but that's about Legos and video games. But everything else was people. Um, so no, not with my brother. And then friends, not really either. I had a habit of hanging out with the kids that were kind of goofier, like video game kids, and that just wasn't the topic of conversation. And then I heard about all the kind of popular kids or the popular boys that would be hanging out with the popular girls and all the shenanigans that they were up to, but you never really knew what was going on. Like I always imagined they're playing spin the bottle or like all those kind of classic tropes of what do you do at a party, and that wasn't me. I was wearing sweatpants and turtlenecks and being a goofy kid. when I went, this was probably fifth or sixth grade. But my first experience that I can recall with being highly aroused and discovering masturbation was, and it's kind of strange to think about, but my grandfather gave me a book that it's a historical fiction book. It's called Clan of the Cave Bear. And I do want to say there's trigger warnings in there. It's a very controversial, it has some controversial scenes in it because it sounds like maybe you're familiar with this book.
Well, one of my dear friends just borrowed it from a bookshelf at my parents' house when we were there like a few months ago, and then gave it back to me. And so I have it, but I was like, oh my God, I didn't know what was in it?
Well, just be prepared. It's that I would say the first book is traumatic and
Okay.
not sexy at all. It's about a young Homo sapien woman who's it starts when she's a girl. She's beautiful. She sounds like this tall, blonde, skinny, beautiful woman. And she gets separated from her people and she gets adopted by Neanderthals. And all of a sudden, she's the ugly duckling who doesn't fit. And it's how she fits into that society. So that whole book, and there's some scenes that involve her being assaulted sexually. And I know my grandfather, he was a nature person. He knew I loved nature. He knew it's a great book. I'm not saying it's a bad book. It's a fantastic book. Written, but I don't know if I should say the author, but
It doesn't
I've
matter.
already said the title of the
Yeah.
book,
Yeah, it's
Jean
fine.
Hall. Written by a woman who just you could tell knew her stuff, and it's very detailed, and you'll get sucked right in. So I highly suggest it. And then once you get done with the first book, she gets separated from the Neanderthals, and she's had this horrible, awful childhood growing up with these Neanderthals. And then she gets separated, and she meets the Homo sapien man, and he's got like a really manly name, and they develop this, so it's a whole series. They develop this romantic relationship where he's basically teaching her what a real genuine sexual connection is afterwards. So she's only experienced kind of abuse, and or she just makes this connection with this guy in total private. There's no other people around. It's just her and him, and they're stuck in this like cave, and there's just hot, steamy sex scenes where he is, and they're both. It's reciprocal. At first, it's just him, but it's this female author who's writing who her ideal, I don't want to put words into her mouth, but it's this ideal guy treating a woman like an actual absolute princess, like just treating her the way she wants to be treated. And it's very graphic and very sexual. And I think it's when I was sitting there as a probably 13-year-old late at night reading this book, realizing what I've just discovered in it is like hot, steamy sex scenes, and reading how graphic it was, that's when I discovered, and at least in my recollection, what I could do with
Okay.
my own body. And I do want to just pause real quick. I'll describe what my first masturbation session was like because it's very funny, I think, from my perspective. But I have always been someone who wants to please the woman that I'm with. And I think when it may be weird to kind of dive into my own head. It goes back to when I was just me and my mother, and I'm watching my mother all the time. So I was raised in my first couple of years just by my mother. My father passed when I was very young. And I've always had an attention to how she's feeling and what she's doing. And I think that's kind of carried throughout my life. So when I read this book where this guy is paying super close attention to how this woman's feeling and experiencing these sexual things, it just really resonated with me. And I think that's something that's carried throughout my sexual development is I'm always kind of focusing on signals and body language and watching specifically women's faces and how they're feeling, and it's just something that I feel like I can do.
That's amazing.
That's different. That's like that can get discussed later. But what I did was, so I read this scene and I started kind of rubbing myself on my bed sheets, and I literally just sat there and in my bed humped my bed sheet to the point that I came all over my bed sheet. And that was the first time I ejaculated. It was like rubbing. It's funny to think about now because I rubbed with so much friction that it was like burning, like, but it was so exciting, so interesting. And I just made a mess out of my bed sheets. And I just remember being surprised, not being ashamed of it, but just like surprising myself that that happened. I don't remember if I'd seen the video before or after that I mentioned earlier. So I think I knew that it was okay to ejaculate. Like it
Okay.
wasn't, it's just something that I hadn't done as of yet. But once I discovered that I could do that, I earmarked those pages in the book so that I could return to those scenes again and again. And there's probably 2 or 3 scenes or 4 or 5, I don't know, per book. And there's many books in that series. And those, I suggest go read them all because they're really fantastic. I think the second or third book, she like gets attracted to another guy. So they like deals with relationship issues and things like that. But the point is, I found those scenes and that was my first porn or whatever. It
Yeah.
was smut for me. I would sit there and I would just read the sex scenes over and over again. And I would rub my dick on the bed sheets and I would ejaculate, but I was doing it so much that I eventually got like rug burn on my penis.
Oh, owie.
So I would do it and then I would have to stop for like a week because I needed to heal. And so I realized very quickly that even though that was very fun and I enjoyed the sensation, I needed to figure a different way. So I evolved. I evolved my game and I realized that I could use my hands, and more than just use my hands, I needed a lubricant. But in my head, the thing that I chose was baby powder. So I started masturbating with baby powder, which is funny now when I think about it because actually don't enjoy having a lot of lube
Yeah.
on me, like
Okay.
liquidy lube. I enjoy dry. I enjoy holding the skin and creating friction that way, like on the muscle rather than on the actual skin. And that's
Yeah.
very important, I think, for me.
I love that detail.
But
Thank
yeah,
you.
I went from like chafing myself on bed sheets to rubbing myself with baby powder. And now that I'm an adult and I have my own kids, I'm like imagining what it was like to like come into my room afterwards and it smells like baby powder, or like my sheets are a total mess. Like what was it like to be on the outside looking in, seeing me develop? Because I'm sure there was signs of that. I don't know. That's hilarious to think about.
I love that.
And I noticed that after that, like while I'm doing all that, I enjoyed the smell of my own cum. Like I enjoyed
Oh,
the smell of like just that whatever you want to call it, musty, just I don't know. I just enjoyed it. It was my own thing and I knew what it smelled like. Yeah. I just
I
enjoyed it.
fucking love that. When did you start exploring with partners? And how? And what do you remember?
So this is perfect. It leads into my next thing. I was not, like I said, I was kind of a goofy kid. I think I was well liked. I don't know, but I was certainly not a popular kid. And I was shy. When I was a kid, I was shy. I was not interested in really talking to girls in any kind of romantic way. And I did know, I think, at that point that it was women that I was mainly interested in, but I was terrified to try to actually explore. So I did not physically explore anything with women, at least not until later in 6th grade. But the next adventure that happened is that we got AOL on the family computer. So I'm of the era where, as I was a young teen, that AOL, AIM, chat rooms, and all
Yep.
those things all of a sudden just became available to me on the family computer, which was like in a little room off to the side of the family room. So there was like, it wasn't privacy, but it wasn't closely monitored. So I had the ability to just kind of jump on and start chatting with people. And I did the whole like ASL You know what that means, the age, sex, location. So
Okay.
you would just jump in an AOL chat room, any random chat room. You'd be like, hey, I'm looking for, you know, hot chicks or something. And you would say ASL because you wanted people to tell you what their age was, what their sex was, and where their location was, which was so dumb because like people would just make up whatever they wanted to, and that's what I was doing. It's exactly what I was doing. I got on. I was a young teenager, but all of a sudden in my head, I was a young 20-something hot dude cruising for babes, and that was what I was doing. So I was literally on there looking for girls to chat with. And I think I became pretty good at it where I would, and it's funny thinking now, like, I don't know who the heck I was talking to.
Yeah.
But in my head, I'm talking to hot babes, and I would get on there and basically start private chats with people that I assumed were women and would have essentially not phone sex, but chat sex with them and get really physical and very explicit and basically mimic kind of some of the language that I was reading in the books that I was just talking about.
Okay.
So like very intimate, very kinky, whatever, like very sexual. Like I was having phone sex on AOL chat rooms with my family in the other room and finding that extremely exciting. I wouldn't say I might have been like touching myself while I was doing this, but the goal wasn't necessarily to ejaculate. I'm not going to say I never did,
Yeah.
but my family was right there, so there was a certain amount of risky excitement that came out of doing that. But I remember very clearly I had it wasn't a girlfriend, but I had an older woman that I had regular conversations with, and it was explicit. Like we were having phone sex on a regular basis, and I was lying to her and telling her that I was an older person. But just I felt very comfortable with having those conversations. It felt empowering for me. It felt like I was doing it well, like it was validating for me. So it was just something that it was a way for me to feel like, yes, I can do this and I'm good at it. And I really enjoyed doing it. Yeah, AOL was a wild, a wild place back then. Um, I just felt very comfortable on there.
Okay.
And it even got to the point, and this part's a little strange because I had crushes at school. Like I had people that I was interested in. I think and at one point during the sixth grade, I did end up going to a party. It wasn't like the cool kids party, but it was a, mixed gender party, and we played spin the bottle. And I did kiss someone, but for me, that it was just like a awkward. It wasn't sexual for me at all. It was just like you do it because those are the rules of the game. But I remember there was a classmate that I was extremely attracted to, and I attempted to reach out to this person on AOL Instant Messenger, and I started saying some things to her. And as far as the communications back to me, they were being flirtily received.
Okay.
I think it would have been inappropriate if it had been discovered what I was saying. I was basically propositioning her. We were both super, it would have been, I don't know. I don't want to say it would have been too young, but it would have been, it's like if our parents had found out, it would have been a problem. But I always had in the back of my head, like, I'm saying these things. I feel comfortable saying them. I'm excited that they're seem to be received and almost reciprocated. But I always wondered, like, she was one of the more popular girls. Like I always wondered, like, are they just sitting there like a group of girls and are they like laughing about this? Like I always had, and I don't know. There was never. I think if that were the case, I would have heard about it at school.
Yeah.
Like it would have come up. So I've always wanted to know, like, was that for real? Like I didn't have the guts to say, like, go to the next level, but I
Okay.
did enjoy like flirting with that. Like I flirted with, could I, in real life, kind of apply some of this knowledge I have to someone that I'm really attracted to?
Wow. Also, I'm like, It never occurred to me that the popular guy I was instant messaging with might have been sharing with friends. And looking back, I'm like, maybe he did. Now he did turn into my secret hookup buddy, but he initiated all of it. Like I think now looking at him, I would have been so mad if all of those things had been like not followed through on too.
Right,
I
right,
know, I know teasing has its place, but I am, because my brain is so literal, I'm like, we had a plan. What do you mean if it's just for fun?
right. You said.
Wow. Okay. It sounds like there was a lot of confidence in the chatting, though. It sounds like there was a lot of confidence still, like in the words, in the exploration of it.
It's funny now because, yes, and I think I'm rediscovering my voice now. I think being dominant and assuming, just I'm a dominant now. Like I feel like a dominant and
Nice.
I am now much more comfortable kind of voicing myself in a sexy and fun way. Whereas I think a lot of that got suppressed for a while. And I have different theories as to why I feel that way. But I want to get back to that. Like, I almost would like to try writing. And it's funny because I do a little bit on certain websites or certain social websites that are kinky. I do some writing and some journaling, and I like to write about experiences I've had.
Mm,
But I would love to just, yeah, like try writing some, maybe even some fiction smut, just like really get back to that, like the AOL chat room roots, and see if I still have it.
yeah.
I know I have it, but like to just do it. But I think my first theory as to what suppressed that is the visual, is discovering, because what happened next in the house was satellite TV. So I lived in a rural area. There was no cable.
Yeah, same.
No, the best I got was like we'd go to the summer house. There was a summer house. We'd go to the summer house and there was like the squiggly, fuzzed out porn channels. Like you catch like a boob every 3 minutes, you
I've
know?
heard of scramble
Um,
porn.
oh my God, it's hilarious. And it did it. It's done it before, like it was good. But my parents got satellite TV, and all of a sudden, all these movie channels were available to me,
Mm,
and all the like goofy softcore productions that comes along with that. And I say goofy just because the acting was like, it was always funny to me. I think it's supposed to be kind of funny. And just regular rated R movies that I wasn't allowed to watch. Like I all of a sudden had everything at my fingertips and I was able to explore my visual eye, which I think is what was lacking before that. Because
yeah,
my first experience was books. It wasn't
yeah.
the visual. And I wonder if that kind of ruined, or not ruined, but suppressed the written aspect for me.
Hmm.
I remember specific scenes. I remember certain actor, like a lot of it's funny because guys, bros, like document boobs that they've seen. They like know exactly which boobs they've seen. But like I can do that. Like I know certain boobs that I've seen,
Yeah,
like I've
I
got,
sure know.
they're categorized, but that wasn't always like super exciting to me. It's just fun. Like, yes, I've seen so and so's boobs, but certain scenes in certain movies stuck out and just like opened up my kinky brain to a whole different world of what I was interested in and what was sexy for me.
Mm.
There is a particular actor named Kerry Werher, and I don't know if I'm saying her last name correctly. She did move into, I think, a music career or something after that. But there's this movie called, and I think it had different names, but there's one movie title that it's named by called Hit and Run, and it's a shitty movie. It's a bad movie. But there's this particular scene where she is playing the role of this kind of badass. She's like the criminal's girlfriend who's running away from the criminal. And she basically is manipulating this young man to help her escape. So he's got the car, he's helping her escape. But there's this scene where they stop at a motel and she dresses herself in a full bodysuit. It's funny because it's not a revealing outfit, but it's for me, it is just that all black body stocking with sexy black underwear underneath. And she basically plays the role of a dominatrix in
Mm.
this scene where she handcuffs him to the bed. She's dripping hot wax on him. She is rubbing herself all over his crotch and just beating him with, I think she has a crop. She's hitting him with a crop. And it's something about that scene and her, specifically the outfit, that just like it won't leave my head. Like that's embodies a lot of kind of the type of physical outfit that I'm interested in.
Mm.
It's not the only outfit, but it's just that idea that you are dressing yourself in a completely sexual manner and behaving the way she was that was just sparked something in my head. And it's funny now because I think about it, I'm not seeking to be dominated like that. Like I think the scene itself and what she was doing isn't what I'm actively seeking, but it's that idea that she was like a complete sexual being in that scene that was extremely attractive to me.
Yeah.
And dark, sexy, slutty even. It was wild, wild for me. And I had never seen anything like that when I was at that age. You know, I had read, but I hadn't seen it.
I totally get that. For me, witnessing embodied, confident sexuality of a person of either gender, any gender, is one of the most erotic and impactful things that I can experience.
I like, yeah, confidence. The
Yeah.
confidence, willingness.
Like when someone knows what they want and is willing to get it in a way that is, in collaboration with their partner. But that certainty, too, is what really has allowed me to embrace my own confidence, right? Like having partners where I got to experience how they held space for me is what helped me discover my own erotic creature and my own confidence. And now I love being able to like create and offer that to my other lovers, and still invite in lovers to my life where I can be fully held so that I can relax too. So I like seeing that, being on either side of that sounds really hot to me, but I'm like, oh yeah, now I want to drip wax on someone and I want them to drip it on me, is that when you like identified yourself as having kinkier proclivities or like, I mean, because this is all still before you've even like erotically touched another human being, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I do think I realized like I liked kind of the that bad. And I think at that point I realized that was bad. Like
Oh,
it's not
naughty.
monogamous. Yeah, it's naughty. Yeah. And it's yes. It's funny. I say the term like woman of the night, which I know is brings like a whole bunch of like ridiculous connotation with it, but it's like that idea like you are it's a purely sexual creature at that moment. You're
Yeah.
not a submissive housewife who's doing her duty.
Yeah.
It's not a religious, experience. It is primal sexual.
Okay, so do you want to take us into the physical connection? Like what unfolded? Was your first physical experience with your wife, now submissive, or what kind of came first in partnered touching?
Yes. So beyond that kind of first kiss that I mentioned earlier that didn't feel very romantic at all and was a forced, kind of weird situation, rite of passage, if you will.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I met my current partner in high school. And it's funny because we were both sophomores. We were both attending Catholic high school, but different high school. So I went to an all boys high school and she did not. But we would host dances at our high school that were kind of the talk of the surrounding area, and women, girls would just flock from everywhere wanting to meet one of, the boys that went to our school, which were weird experiences. So we met at this dance, and I approached a the girls used to like dance in these like tight circles, and they were just like groups of friends that showed up together, and like you'd have to try to like get in there somehow to dance or just to say hello and meet somebody. And I think I just started dancing with this girl, and I didn't really know what the hell I was doing, but I know I wanted to meet a girl. So I was attracted to this person, started dancing with her, danced a few dances with her, which I'm not going to say I was a good dancer, but we danced. I must have impressed her enough because we went to the kind of like social cafeteria area and started talking, which I think went fine. But what's funny about the whole interaction is that I asked her not for her phone number, I asked for her AOL screen name because that's what
Yeah.
because that's what I was comfortable with.
Did you even have, I mean, because the phones back then, you didn't necessarily have a cell phone like that would, or if you did, it would be really early. Like it's like the house phone, right?
It was either house phone or like I would get the house cell phone
Right.
to go out with,
Yeah.
for
Yeah. Like the
emergency.
family phone. Yeah, exactly.
But that wasn't the number you gave out. You gave
Yeah.
out the house
The
phone.
house phone.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
remember.
I didn't have the guts to ask for the number because I didn't want to have to talk on the phone. I wanted to be able to sit there and type and think about what I was going to say. But one thing led to another, and we ended up dating. And I remember the first date, I had my brother drive me to pick her up in the family minivan, and went to a movie, Bewitched, which is another horrible movie. Maybe some people like it, I don't know, but it wasn't very interesting to me. I was more interested in this girl
Yeah.
who I was on a first date with. It was my first real date I'd ever been on. And we were in a movie, so we're not really like talking to each other. We're just kind of next to each other. And we had spoken online quite a bit. So I felt comfortable knowing who she was, and I think she knew who I was as much as you can at that surface level. And I made the like classic movie moves with her. We're like putting my arm around her and just experiencing that like really electric physical touch of touching a leg. I think she was just wearing jeans on that date. So, it was, and I had no intention of doing more touching than just touching a leg or touching a shoulder. But I got the guts to kiss her, and I kind of I was a big guy back then. I was like, I said I'm a larger person, but I was like a football player, big guy. And I pulled her in and I started kissing her in the movie. And that was, for me, my first sexual, exciting touch. And I was so into it. And we were just kissing, kissing. And at one point, she pushes away from me and says, "You need to stop pulling me in so tight because you're crushing me against the armrest of the chair." I was so into it that I was trying to pull her so close to me that I was squishing her
Oh
into
my
the
gosh.
armrest of the chair. And I didn't even realize it. I was just so excited. So I obviously wasn't reading her cues at that moment. I think because I was so intoxicated, so in my own head, that yeah, squished her.
Wow.
So that was my
Wow.
first physical experience. And it was amazing. It was great.
So from there, when did you start getting sexy with a partner? Like what have you learned from the evolution? It sounds like you guys were together, had other partnerships a little bit, and now have like reconnected. So take us through whatever highlights feel relevant. First time, not the first are the most important, but they're often formative. And then tell us how you got, like we heard a little bit about how you got kinky, but tell us about moving into kink whenever it feels good.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I could just go through like every single sexual encounter with this particular person, with my partner.
Amazing.
Um,
Do you just document it in your head, or do you like? Is it just up here, or do you like? I remember a lot of stuff because I sexy journal a lot, like when I have experiences. But is yours just cataloged in your brain?
I'm not going to say I'm like photographic,
Yeah,
but I do have like, I think the ones that stick out to me the most stick in my head for sure.
yeah. There's a lot of vivid description in your speech.
Yeah. And I do want to go through, I think like, I just described my first kiss. Maybe that wasn't the most exciting sexual, but
I love it.
I loved it too. There was a few dates later that I just brought her to my parents' house, and we have woods out in back that it's very private. And I told my parents we're going to go for a walk. And we went out into the woods and we were making out, kissing. And I decided that I was going to put my hands down her pants and explore something that I had never done before. And she was just reading the cues, was extremely ready for me to do that. And I can just remember every single kind of inching down her stomach and the way I use my hand to, as we're kissing the whole time, just faces against each other, and just we're standing in the woods, and I'm pushing my big hand just down, and I just remember like I knew exactly what I was doing, just pushing her panties down with the back of my hand,
Mm.
and just feeling that wetness for the first time, just feeling something I had never touched before, but it was making me so absolutely aroused. And just putting one finger very just gently and delicately on the outside and just feeling how amazing it was. But I that sticks in my head, and I do like to like bring that up while we're having sex now. Like I like to tell stories of things like that while we're in the middle of having sex, and it brings us back. It
Mm.
brings me back, and
Yeah.
I think it raises a level of excitement by bringing up those details, because they're right in my head.
To me, that is so, I think that's romantic. I mean, I'm always trying to figure out what is romantic, but like to me, the level of attention, the storytelling, the remembering of the detail, and using that to connect in a present physical moment, I think that is so beautifully hot. I think I would call that romantic. Like that's because it's so personal. It's so personal.
Yeah, no, that was a big moment, and
Mm.
I hope that's romantic.
It's something cool. Yeah, and then what?
And then we moved on. We kept progressing, and I knew back then I had an absolute love of blowjobs. Like, and I had discovered porn at that point, which I also think, like the movies, is like it's almost like too stimulating. But I knew that I wanted blowjobs. I wanted her mouth on my penis constantly. Like
Yeah.
I just it's something about watching someone please me. It's something about the feeling of it. It's just knowing that it is an act of service that is meant for my pleasure. I was addicted to not only touching her, but being touched by her. And I think it at some point caused us strife, just because like my desire was so intense. Like I had an intense desire to constantly be exploring and doing things. And she was a willing participant, but
Yeah.
I think like she would be sick, and I'd be like, well, are you well enough to do this?
Right.
And for her, that was like ridiculous. Like, no,
Okay.
I don't feel well. I'm sick. And I wasn't being considerate of the other person, but
Mm.
I knew that that's what I wanted all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's finding a balance, right? Like, it's just as easy to err on the side of never asking for needs to be met. And, hopefully we have partnerships that can weather the discomfort of, like, no, idiot, don't ask right now. Or hopefully it's said in a nicer way. And then we learn, we calibrate.
Yeah, but even if it's not asked that way,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But yes, so I said we kept progressing. So I think we moved on. I like to explore her with my mouth. I was encouraging her to explore me with my mouth. I would ask her in the most inopportune times. Like we'd be in the car with like my mom driving up front, and I'd want her to be touching me. So I was just like to the point of being unreasonable, like, but I couldn't. And I didn't really have shame about it. Like if I had gotten caught, I would have had shame about it. And it's funny because thinking back on it, like she was pretty much game. Like that we had some close call, exciting experiences, probably at the expense of my mom. I feel bad about stuff like that, but it was almost like being an exhibitionist. Like I was excited to just like do it whenever, wherever.
Mm.
And then I think in our discussions, we decided to progress to having sex. And I think it was a nice experience. I'm not going to go into crazy detail about it because it was also awkward and I think painful for her. I'm not going to say I'm a gigantic person, but I've got a decent sized penis. But we did enjoy the intimate experience of it. Like we still talk about it.
Mm.
So the first time, I'm not going to say it was like this amazing magical experience. It was awkward, but I think once it happened, it just that was the floodgates had opened at that point. Then we were open to having sex constantly and having sex outside, having sex in her bedroom, having sex wherever we could.
Wait, like outside,
Um,
like the woods? Like where?
Yep. Yeah. Outside in the woods, outside in fields. And to this day, that's something we enjoy. I'm not going to say it happens all the time. And I think the reason that it maybe doesn't now is because it's harder for her to climax outside. But we still do. We still fool around outside. And we just don't, we're not going on dates as much because we've got kids and but yeah, everywhere. And then, yes, during those high school years, we had a couple breakups where we both kind of explored other people. I don't know if that's where my focus is, though. Like with those other people,
Yeah.
it's funny. I enjoy that I got to experience other people and kind of understand that there are so many different people out there and that everybody is so very much different in how the way they like to be pleased and please me. So that was a valuable experience, I think.
Yeah, totally. But it also, this whole experiment that we're engaging in right now is about unpacking your own personal wisdom. And sometimes the wisdom is like, I discovered I want my partner. You know, I discovered that I'm the most magnetically attracted to my submissive, who
Yeah.
is my life partner.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear in the years that followed, you know, you explored with other people, you got back together. What, if anything, feels important to share about the time before you got into the clear discussions around kink? And then how has your sex life changed since bringing kink into it? You know, we heard a little bit about the frameworks, but I would love to hear specifics, you know,
Mm.
both physical and the connection quality of the relationship.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned I love cum play. I love blowjobs. I love like I had certain things that I knew that I loved. And I did have certain other partners that just gave me different experiences there. I was like, whoa, like there's so many different and unusual things out there. But I wanted them from this person. I wanted them from my partner.
Yeah.
Uh, Obviously, I don't want her to be a different person, but I just like that. I just knew there was so much for us to explore. Having all of those other experiences made it so that I could feel like it was okay to desire those things. Feel like it was possible to be given those things. And after we had our couple breaks, it also became difficult for me. I think we knew that the relationship we had was heading towards a marriage because we were both had very traditional backgrounds. There was a trust situation where I think she wanted me to propose to her
Mm.
and get married. And I wasn't sure that she was dead set on me because we had had kind of breaks that were generally, in my perspective, started by her wanting to take a break. That was often the terminology used is taking a break, and she would explore with other people. So I would say, "Oh, we're on a break," and I would go explore with other people. So I think when it came to marriage, I told her, if you want to get married, that you need to propose to me. And that's how it happened. She ended up proposing to me and we got married. And that's how I knew that she was serious and wanted it to be monogamous and wanted to make it official and be with me forever. So yeah, it's just a reversal of tradition.
I love that.
I think what's important is during our time, like we have a loving relationship, but during that time, we fell into a marriage rut where I had a lot of sexual needs and she had a lot of emotional needs, and our love languages weren't matching, and we weren't communicating about it, or the communication that was coming out was heated and full of emotion, and it was just leading to strife between us. And I think what's funny now, like being a dominant now and thinking about how I behave now that I've assumed this role that I identify with, that is me. I wasn't being dominant during those portions of our marriage where it felt like I was being like a spiteful kid and my mom just asked me to do too many chores, and I was like
Mm,
grumbling under my breath because I didn't feel like I was getting what I wanted, but I was still expected to just be part of this marriage relationship. Yeah, well, and as much as that I didn't feel like my needs were being met, I think my wife also was feeling that her needs weren't being met. So it's
mm,
interesting when we decided to embark on this transition. And I read a number of books before I decided to kind of even broach this question to her, was to kind of make this jump. Like I remember it's very funny. We had a canoe ride, and I actually videotaped some of it, which was fun. I was taking pictures of her because she looked beautiful on the canoe. So I'm taking these kind of sexy upskirt photos of her sitting on a canoe. We're facing each other out on this beautiful lake. And I remember I am proposing this idea. I said, I've been doing this research and I've decided that I'd like to try a dominant submissive relationship. And I don't think I said 24/7 at that moment. And I don't know if I exactly knew that's what I meant. I was listening to podcasts, I was doing readings. So I knew what they were, but I didn't know what was right for us.
mm,
But I remember just having a very kind of frank conversation. Maybe that was our first contract meeting, was out on this canoe while I'm taking photos of her. And she knows I'm taking photos. She's watching me take photos of her, being kind of bashful. And it was just this magic, beautiful moment where we are going to embark on a new adventure. And it was roughly around kind of like COVID time. So things were crazy. The timeline, I can't keep the timeline straight in my head, but things were, things were tumultuous. And we're having this conversation like we've been married for over 10 years. Do we want to try this new exciting thing? And we're both kind of like tingly saying yes. We're going to explore a dynamic together and see where it takes us. It's super exciting, super exciting. And it allowed me to feel like I could be an active member in the relationship and kind of designing it
mm.
rather than just letting it steamroll. Because maybe that's what I felt for a long time, is that we're just becoming older married people.
Yes.
Now we get to examine it, we get to make it work for us, we get to express ourselves. And while I may not get every single need met that I want at every single moment of my life, the amount of exploration that we've done together because of this is amazing.
Mm.
Absolutely amazing.
I love that so much. And I hear so often that the momentum of marriage, of life, or whatever, does create space where there isn't necessarily active co creation or collaboration because it's just following the norms and the hustle and bustle of life. And I would love to hear specifically any like standout moments from your experiences since entering this dynamic together that, leave you feeling sparkly, and or any other aspects of the dynamic that just light you up.
I'll be selfish at first because I just wanted certain kinky things for myself. Specifically, I wanted to videotape things. I wanted to explore piss play. I wanted to explore cum play. And the thing that sticks out for me the most is the cum play because it had always been a desire of mine. She had always known it had been a desire of mine. And years before we had decided on the dynamic, we had gone on vacation once and we had kids at the time with us. But we had space enough that I decided I was going to have a very careful conversation with her about what was so interesting for me about it and why I wanted it so much with her, because I think she immediately assumed it was degradation, which she's not into, at least not extreme degradation, and that it was me objectifying her in a way that was not good. And I had I created a whole argument and reasons as to why it was so important to me, and we had a very good conversation. I think sitting out on like a balcony and just having this really kind of fun, sexy conversation where I'm basically convincing her to say that it's not that bad that I want it, and she did actually let me do it that vacation, but it was like very much in the context of what I think of as like traditional marriage, where you are kind of rewarded with these magical experiences only as like a rare gift, like on our anniversary or on Valentine's Day, like, and we had done that for years, where I just expected this amazing experience without communicating with her. That one time that I just spoke of ended up working out very well because I communicated so carefully with her. But so much on a regular basis, I expected like the magic in the bedroom that happens on Valentine's Day once a year without any communication. And when it doesn't happen exactly the way I thought it would happen, then it was kind of a letdown. Or if I put so much pressure on her to make it happen that day, which is funny because it's me putting pressure on her rather than we're both making a scene happen, she feels too much pressure and it turns into something that it shouldn't be. I don't want to make a broad generalization, but it's a very common thing for us to do that, to like make what happens on Valentine's Day is this big, amazing thing, and it just puts a lot of pressure on everybody, get upset and unhappy. So the dynamic, bringing us back to the original question, for me, being able to express all these things has allowed us to really just do that on a much more casual basis. And I mentioned earlier that I had like big contracts, that big kind of like bulky thing with like a list of rules and a list of kind of do's and don'ts and kinks and things that would be good or things that would be bad. At least in doing that, I was able to express what I want, and we could do it on a much more casual basis where there was less pressure. I think I also want to talk about the fact that I designed the contract by reading all these blogs, looking at other people, looking at other DOMs and what they do. And after going through kind of like a hardcore contract like that, we came to an understanding through our meetings that it wasn't quite servicing us the way that I think it does with other dynamics. So, and this may be controversial to some people, but what I just talked about with Valentine's Day, like even when we're deciding that we're going to have playtime, it's almost works against us to one, have too many rules, and two, to plan too much. I know a lot of people like to plan scenes very explicitly, and I understand that, especially if you are meeting new people and you need to make sure the boundaries are very clear and set.
Totally.
But coming from our relationship where we know each other and we trust each other and we have had so much sex without a plan, like we have just had years and years and years of sex where there is no plan. I think as long as we're aware of kind of our hard limits, things tend to work better. if we don't overplan our scenes. And I think that's the same thing that happened to the contract. Is the contract just was trying too much to be something else and got exploded. So we ended up dialing way back. And now we really just have kind of a set of principles to live by. There are some certain rituals that are expected every day.
Like what?
So what is kind of survived the cut is what I like to think about, is that there's a nightly submission from my sub who is going to prepare herself for bed. I really am like a daddy dom. I take care of her, and then she takes care of me uh, in the ways that I need to be taken care of. So I am very much making sure that she's a professional person and she needs to shut down at some point, whether it's the nights, whether it's the weekends, whether it's vacations. So my job is to help her get there. So the nightly submission where she gets herself ready, whether it's for bed or for play, and she kneels and we have a script that we say to each other. Like it's just a miss or whatever you want to say. It's a saying that we say to each other. She says something to me, I say something back to her, and that's developed over time. But I think we're pretty set on where we are now. And she has her head at my kind of crotch area. Doesn't sound very romantic to say crotch area, but she's kneeling in front of me. But it's just a nightly ritual where she submits to me and I then either help her to bed or we play and fuck and have awesome sex and do great things. And then I put her to bed. And then I either come to bed with her or not. But yeah, we make sure we're meeting each other's needs. And I think that's what's really important about where we've developed.
That is so fucking beautiful and like hot, erotic, and sweet. And I am just so glad to hear that you both had the shared mutual wisdom to be like, actually, too much structure is, suffocating this connection. And we actually don't need that much. And I think every aspect requires something different, right? Like, I know that for myself, if I like to know that I might get peed on in a certain week or month. Like, and I like to have like certain things planted, but ultimately I am such a big fan of staying in the energy of the now in the mutual co-creation. And it sounds like you together have discovered a way to do that on a regular basis that's integrated with and supportive of the lives that you lead together. And putting her to bed is so hot and sweet. And I've never thought about that before. And now I'm like, I want that. That's cute. That's romantic. I think that's romantic.
It's funny because she's not a little,
Yeah.
I'm not putting her to
No,
bed like a little.
no, no,
Taking
no.
care of her. And
Yeah.
it is funny, it took some work to get to that spot because I think looking at all the other doms out there, all the daddy doms, all the, like classic old school leather doms, like all the masters. For me, I kind of had to check myself because I can turn into this like stern and stoic person who wants to punish and like uphold the law, and I think I had to really kind of take a deep breath and take a step back when I was losing sight of taking care of her because I did or I do from time to time get a little pissy, like I get a little like too rough and too hard. Not rough like physical, but I'm saying like I get turn into this stoic guy and I stop talking and I want to be like the domliest dom that I can be, and it doesn't really work for our dynamic. So I do have to come to grips with the fact that I'm not that traditional image of what you would think a dom is. Like I've had to, and I think that's what's really different for me is that I have to make it work for our relationship. I'm not interested in. It's not like if I don't, if she's not doing all the things on the checklist that I'm just going to go find a different submissive. This is my person. Like
Yeah.
we are developing something together. So I had to check myself and say, what am I doing to make sure I'm still that person that I want to be, but that I'm also meeting her needs as well. So it's been interesting because I've got to keep that end goal in mind that we don't want to go seeking other people, like that we are together. So what works and what makes sense.
I am so with you, and I am truly in awe of your wisdom. And I'm just like feeling just a warm, fuzzy, kinky inspiration as I hear you talk. So I am just awash in gratitude. I would love to hear if there's anything else in the notes that you made, because I know you prepared, that feels like needs to be shared for this portion of your story, knowing and understanding that perhaps at some point we'll come back to talk about porn and other things before we transition.
Well, you mentioned you want to know whether you're getting peed on or not, which I totally respect. It's funny because I mentioned piss play, and that's something I'm very interested in. I'm fascinated with watching her pee. So, like, even in our kind of vanilla marriage, and before that, I love to watch her pee. I love watching her pee. We still do, but more so when we were younger, we would hike a lot. And we're getting back out there now. But like, I love watching her pee outside. Like, I just something really kind of primal and intimate about watching a woman crouch down and get over the fact that they're outside and not sitting on a toilet and just letting it go and peeing out in nature, and whether or not there's something to wipe with or not. Like either she'll have a little tissue that she can clean up with and bury, or she'll just shake her butt to like try
Yes.
to get whatever she can off and then just deal with the rest. But just like it is profoundly sexual for me,
Mm,
and I don't necessarily know why. Part of it's just seeing her vagina, but part of it is also seeing the mechanics of how things work. And part of it is I also enjoy watching her wet herself. Like I enjoy watching getting the yoga pants wet,
yeah.
panties wet, having an accident, but on purpose, obviously, for me. Like I don't think about it like in like the little sense, like, oh, I had an accident.
Yeah.
Like you're doing it and you want me to see it. That's sexy to me and I want to see it. So I enjoy recording her peeing. I like taking pictures. I did bring up the suggestion, like maybe you could try having me, like doing more, like having me pee on her, and we're discussing that. It's not something I necessarily know I want to do,
Okay.
but maybe it's something to try. But yeah, like watching everything about her peeing. I don't know if I want her to pee on me. I haven't. I don't think I'd have a problem with it, but I don't know if it's like that would be extra for me, like
Yeah.
extra good, or if it would just be something. But I would try for sure. But yeah, that's. I just wanted to specify.
Okay, I love that specification because it helps me realize that I also actually don't need or require warning if a partner just wants to pee on me in the shower. Like if we're showering together and they pee on me, like that to me is silly, sweet, and fun. It's more so if it's like I guess it is like
Yeah, yeah,
ritualistically degrading. And I also, because my piss play experiences in some instances have included like partners peeing in my mouth, like I want the whole water, I want to know what they're drinking. I want to know that they're preparing for, like, I want to mentally prepare and not just have that sprung upon me, you know? So, and that's something that I would only want to do at this point with a more trusted connection because I did try it a couple times with someone I had just met and that didn't end up feeling good for me. Any other specifics of like kinky things, bondage stuff, come play specifics that we didn't get that just feel important to mention?
I mean, I could talk forever about come play. I think I that's like really where I settle. I love doing. Yeah, I could like I said, I could put it anywhere and I just over and over again. It's funny, I forgot to mention there was one thing about my formative experience being in college, and this can go along if we do an update on porn. I took a class with this like young, hot professor from she was from a much better college. And she was just an adjunct professor, and she was teaching a class on visuality. And it was all about who is viewing and who is being viewed, and going through the philosophy of that, the mechanics of that, the history of that. And it dealt with how engendered that is, and how women have, classically been viewed, whereas men have classically been the viewer. But we talked about everything in that class, and she had these hip arm tattoos and thick glasses and long straight hair, and she was just like you could tell she was just super cool. I think she may have even been dating one of like my classmates or something. Like, who knows what the hell was going on? But we were talking about porn in class, and I just remembered feeling so free in that class to discuss whatever, and I didn't
Mm.
give a shit what the other students thought, because she just she made it feel like a comfortable place to talk about anything, specifically sexual things, in terms of visuality. And just the one little porn thing that we talked about, she's like, what is it, whatever the discussion was, or her prompt was like, what is it about having, attractive people in porn, and specifically having men who are just really well endowed? And I just remember raising my hand in the middle of class and saying, I'm like, when you watch, and maybe I was being a bit of a dick, but I was just like, when you watch porn, you don't want to see someone with a, and this is a generalization, you don't want to see someone with a small little penis. You want to see someone with a big, giant, rock hard. And I just like, the bell rang right then. But I just remember that moment, like, where I felt okay to just say, like, yes, I want to watch porn with a guy who's got a giant penis. Like, I want to see a giant penis. I want to see it
Mm.
spraying buckets of cum on people. And that's like, for me, that's huge. Like, I love it. I love that. I love it. I just love cum shooting all over the place. It's so exciting for me.
Ugh, I love that share. I love hearing that. I also just am such a variety slut. I'm like, I would like to see them all, preferably lined up and back to back. Like, I want to see the same scene with all different kinds of cocks. But that's, I'm easily fascinatable and love novelty.
My mature self would agree with you. And I think, when you ask what is sexy, like, I love looking at anybody, like someone I may not be sexually attracted to, but I'm like, damn, like that person is either one, they just are sexy, or they are being super sexy. And I love when I'm working in my workplace, a lot of kids are so touchy about saying, anything that might be considered gay or
Mm.
different or kinky, or anything that's going to be like get looked at. I'm like, you can look at anybody and say that's sexy, and
Yeah.
it doesn't need to reflect on you. Like, that guy is sexy, that's fine. It doesn't make you gay. You can say it. And if it does make you gay, or if you feel like you are gay, that's not a problem either.
Yes.
But like, you can be sexy no matter what.
Mm. You can be sexy no matter what. Okay, I would love to hear hopes for the future. This can be sexy hopes for the future, non sexy hopes for the future, and like more global hopes for the future, wherever you want to take it.
I want to continue to progress and improve as my dominant self. Like, I just want to expand, and not push that agenda that I was talking about, like being the domliest dom. I want to do what works for me and what works for my submissive. I really want to get into community more. It's just very difficult because I do work a job where I'm concerned about who's gonna be there, like, who am I gonna see? But we did a couple of those rope workshops where we got a taste of community. It was the rope community, it was kinky community, but I just want to get out and meet more people. And I think my submissive really does too, because it's tough when you are surrounded by who you think are a bunch of vanilla people and you're doing something that's different to feel like you're on the right path. So I
Mm.
really just want her to feel part of the community as well, just to give us both kind of the validation we need to know that we're on the right track. Because I know we're on the right track. It just will feel good to know that there's a whole bunch of other people also on the right track too.
Fuck yeah.
I would also like to continue to gently train my submissive. You know, when I first started and we had that crazy contract, I had like a spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet that I shared with her. And like I had all the little things that I was checking off. Like it was just so intense, which I had fun doing, but did it really serve its purpose? I don't think so. So just figuring out ways that I can train her. And in doing so, I'm training myself, I think.
Yeah.
And then I think the last hope and dream at some point in our lives, and there is no rush, we've both acknowledged that we're both jealous people. And
Mm.
it's funny because in our little breaks and whatnot, whenever we started to get too wrapped up with some other person, we'd find some jealous way to like destroy that and bring ourselves back to each other. But at some point, bringing in other people for play, I think, is something we'd both be interested in. She has always been bisexual, has dated women, and I think it's something that she feels is part of her personality that marriage and monogamy has forced her, and expectation from everybody else has,
Mm.
or from society, has depressed in her. So it would be nice to, in a safe way, allow her to feel like she's having that sexual connection with women,
Yeah.
because women are sexy and she should have that. We just need to figure out, like, mentally, how do we get ourselves there to not feel like we're endangering anything or breaking any trust, or just like get out of that kind of vanilla norm. You can only see each other, type of
Totally.
mentality.
Totally. Yeah. Would you ever want to explore your hetero flexibility?
It's funny. I've always, and sometimes I even feel like I can be effeminate myself. Like
Mm.
I remember getting caught as a kid, like shaving my legs in
Mm.
the tub, and I think I was just, I grew up around my mom, and I learned from her.
Yeah.
I guess I'd be fine with exploring it, but I'm not really expecting
Yeah.
that I'm going to be super interested in men, I think is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't scare me. I'm not afraid to try, but it's not something I'm actively seeking. If anything, I'd be more interested in exploring my femininity. Like I like
Cool.
getting dressed up as a woman. Like often I've done that for Halloween. Like sometimes we just change roles. Like I'll dress as her and she'll dress as me, and that's always been fun.
Cool.
Just that, I think I'd be more interested in exploring that than exploring playing with men or non-binary people. But like I'm not opposed, and I think she's actually interested in having multiple men at the same time, or multiple penis owners at the same time. And I'm not, like, it wouldn't freak me out. I don't think it wouldn't freak me out in, like, forgive me for being crude, but like a nuts and bolts kind of way. Like if my body touched somebody else's
Yeah.
body, I'm not going to lose my levels. But it's the jealousy for me. Like
Yeah.
I've always been intensely jealous. So I think I just would need to do some work around that to make sure I'm comfortable. But I'm not
Absolutely.
opposed.
I
I'd
love
love to
that.
see her just filled everywhere. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not your job to answer this question. This is a collective brainstorm. But what do you think we need to make the world a sexier, more loving, and connected place?
I mean, coming from someone who works with kids, it's needs to start with education. Like I truly feel that everybody, but specifically young people, need to understand that it's okay to explore everything about sexuality, and that it's not shameful at all to feel like you're different from whatever that norm is that's getting pushed on you. Like it infuriates me to see kind of what is regurgitated by kids these days. I sound like an old man saying these days, but just seeing what their perspective is and where their knowledge ends. I often I'm trying to like hold back the storm because I could rant about this, but I just feel it's extremely important in this age of religion and I don't know. I'm like getting fired up. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
get my sentence out. The world's crazy right now. It's just it's very difficult in this age where people are expected to be extremely vanilla as possible, and that vanilla doesn't even encompass the word, encompass what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Kids are being raised by pornography and unrealistic expectations from either religious society or conservative society, and it's leaving everybody really fucked up. And we need a way to show people that it can be different. That it needs to be different.
I totally hear you. I totally agree. I've taken great comfort lately from the work of Mark Brackett, who is at Yale and is in charge of an emotions institute, Yale, something like that. And his life mission is to teach children specifically emotional intelligence, like to educate children and adults everywhere. You know, they have programs for grown-ups too. But it's like I listen to his work and I just think about how much better sex lives would be and connection can be, you know, when we have the ability to empathetically and emotionally intelligently connect to one another, you know, because then we can kind of cross these divides and it breaks down some of, I think, what you're referring to, which is all of the fuck upness that comes from rapid technological advancements and all that that's rained down upon us socially, you know, where we have necessarily no agreements worldwide about how to navigate all of this, even though we're more kind of globally connected than ever before, but also in niche silos more than ever. So I totally hear that.
And there's no just real trusted and popular source of information that is credible.
Yeah.
I think it exists, but it's so much easier to type in Pornhub than it is to go looking for the information that's going to be really helpful.
Yeah.
Like how do you make it relevant way that's accessible?
Well, that's why I really want to make edgerotic porn. Like, the next version of this podcast, I just have to find the right collaborators who will have, you know, the next version of this conversation. It's like, so what would you like to do with me? Okay. And then we do it, and a security camera or two watches us. And then we recap and we say, what did you like? What was your favorite parts? What would you do differently? And then I get to put on my director hat and create with porno professionals the movie version, the actual porno version with behind the scenes content so that people can see the difference between an actual sexual experience and the one that is like created for screen in this heightened way, you know. And it's tricky because a lot of content, not just porn, ramps up our amygdala and kind of like makes us drawn to more and more intense things because that's how humans will kind of get addicted in those loops. And so I just want to create
Sure.
educational things that add emotional context so that people have the tools to connect with each other. And that's, you know, that's the noodle that I'm working on next. So I'm curious to hear more about what you've experienced or what you're thinking about porn wise, because it's such a vast industry.
Yeah, and it's readily available for
Yeah.
free.
Yes. And educational things are often behind expensive paywalls. So I want to create things that are
Right,
accessible. Yeah. Yeah.
right, right.
Okay. You have more control over this question. How do you love to spread ripples of love?
For me is patient caring.
Yeah.
I am a kind of service oriented person who's going to patiently care for people, whether it's my partner, whether it's my family, whether it's the people I work with. That's that's me. I am a patient and caring person. Am I going to go spend a fortune on you or anybody? Maybe not, but I will do things for people. That is my way of showing love for people.
I fucking love that. And thank you for joining me here to spread your ripples of love with your personal wisdom. Thank you for being a guest. Thank you for sharing your sex stories.
Thank you, Waya.
Lovely woo humans, that is our show. Remember to follow your hearts and follow your parts and follow me in family-friendly internet places at Lunar Woohoo, or if you're in naughty internet places, at Lunar Secrets. Visit howtowoo.fyi for links to everything. You can support our awesome show on Patreon for early ad-free episodes. You can worship me virtually on OnlyFans or Sextapanther, or we can work together in person in a number of excellent creative capacities. You can also ask a question, share a story, or apply to be a guest at howtowoo.fyi if you want to be on the show. And tell a friend to help us grow. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and let me know how you're spreading ripples of love.